Hi, I'm Victoria. Welcome to my channel. I mentioned recently in my Sailor Moon read-through video about how I've been feeling like really nostalgic lately, and that is still the case. So I had this idea where I'm gonna read through some of my favorite books from my childhood, and I was thinking I might do this a couple of different times for like different ages from my childhood. But right now I'm gonna be focusing on the books that I remember loving in like 6th grade. So I have 7 different things that I'm gonna be reading, and I'm really excited for all of them. I don't know for sure what order I'm gonna be reading these in yet, but I'll just go through and tell you a little bit about them just so you have like an idea of what I'm getting into. I have 2 contemporary books that I'm gonna be reading. The first one is The Burn Journals by Brent Runyon. This is one that I thought was a memoir when I read it when I was a kid. So it'll be interesting to see if it hits different knowing that it is fiction, but I remember it being a very intense read because it is about a boy who he's like telling people that I don't know if I can say this word on YouTube, he's going to commit suicide, and everyone just kind of brushes it off, and then he ends up lighting himself on fire, and he ends up having to spend like a year in physical rehab, and it's about his time during that and like his emotional and physical journey. And I remember it being very, very intense, which I guess would be why it was something that left an impact on me all these years later, where it's something I actually remember reading. But yeah, so I'm sure that'll be kind of a rough read. Hi, Editing Victoria here. My cat is playing in the corner right there, so sorry for the noise. This is a memoir. I was confusing myself. Initially, I thought I remembered it being a memoir, but then something I read online made me think that it wasn't, so I thought it was just a contemporary story. And then when I picked it up to start reading the book, I saw on the back where it talked about it being a memoir. So yeah. The other contemporary book that I'll be reading is called Criss Cross. It's by Lynn Ray Perkins. And looking back, the only thing I really remember about it is that I think this is what started my like preteen desire to be a hipster, because I don't remember fully what it's about. I'll have to look again, but I remember a big part of it was this group of teenagers found this like talk show on the radio that they would just chill in their parked car and listen to every day, or maybe it was like once a week or something. And so it just kind of had this I like something weird, so I'm so quirky vibes, I guess, and it made me want to be like that. But I'll have to recheck and see what the book is actually about. That's the only thing I remember. I will also be reading one manga series. This is Kitchen Princess, written by Natsumi Ando. And I love this series so much when I was a kid. One of the things that I really loved about it was at the end of each volume, she puts these like recipes of the different things that the main character makes in it. But it's about this girl who is an orphan, and she is trying to find this boy from her childhood that kind of touched her heart. And the only thing that she has to go by is this like spoon that he left behind, and it leads her to this academy. What is it called? Seika Academy. And every kid at this school has like a special talent. Well, our main girl, Najika, she kind of gets looked down on when she first gets there because a lot of the girls in the class don't think that she deserves to be there. And she's there for her cooking. And it's basically like a school life story where the main character helps everybody find what they need, I guess you could say, through her cooking. And then there's also kind of a love triangle thing going on. And it's just a very sweet story, and the main character is one of my favorites that I remember reading when I was a kid. Like, she stuck out to me. But I also thought I wanted to be a pastry chef when I was a kid, so I guess we'll see if a big part of the reason why I liked it was just because it was about cooking. I'm gonna be reading one dystopian book. It's Life as We Knew It by Susan Beth Pfeffer, I think is how you pronounce that. This book is about our world, and it's hitting the news that a meteor looks like it's going to hit the moon, and no one really quite takes it seriously. And then it does, and drastically changes everything. and it is a diary entry style book. I remember this was one that I picked as a read for the book club I was in when I was in 6th grade. So I don't know if this one kind of stuck in my memory a little bit because I really loved it, or if it was just because being in that book club stayed in my memory. Because I don't really remember too much about it, but I guess we'll see. And then I'll be reading one nonfiction. It's a memoir. This is A Child Called It by Dave Pelzer. This is going to be a very intense book. I've only read it once in my life, and it has stuck with me ever since. It is about Dave Pelzer when he was a very young child and lived in a very abusive home. And at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, at the time I'm pretty sure it was like the 3rd worst child abuse case in California. I feel like it might seem weird that I read this so young, but I actually think it was a really good age to read it because I think it was one of those things that just kind of made me see kind of how some kids' lives can be. And I truly believe that like understanding can help build empathy. You can't be understanding of things that you don't know happen, you know what I mean? So I for sure will cry during this one, but it's an amazing story and I'm actually really looking forward to reading it again. I don't know why 2 of the books that are like core memories from my preteen years are such heavy books. I guess those just implant in me strongly, but I find that interesting. But I'm also going to be reading 2 fantasy books. The first is The Shadow Thieves by Anne Ursu. This is a Greek mythology book, I believe. It's about this girl and her cousin Z who just came into town, and there's like this sickness going around and Z thinks that he might be the cause of it, but it's kind of confusing. And then when 2 of Charlotte, the main character's friends, get sick, Charlotte and Z go to the underworld looking for a cure. And there's also some like men in tuxedos that seem to be like up to no good. And then there's a cat, and I just remember this book being a lot of fun. And the last book that I'm gonna be reading is The Water Mirror by Kai Meyer. This is actually a translation. What is it from? So it's translated from German, it looks like. And I don't remember hardly anything about what it's about. I remember that it takes place in Venice and that I thought it was really cool and that it had like very pretty writing, if I remember correctly. But in this fantasy version of Venice, in the canals, there are mermaids, but like more old school type mermaids, I guess, because this is kind of what they're like from here to here, their jaw opens up and it's just like a bunch of sharp teeth. And they are kind of forced into pulling like the boats and stuff in the canal. Like they're treated like animals, even though it's clear that they're like an intelligent species and stuff. And then there were also like these stone flying lions, and the world is just so cool. But it's about this girl named Meryl. I think she's like 13, and she is an apprentice to a mirror maker. So this Venice is being attacked by Egypt, and they are only protected by someone called the Flowing Queen and her magic, but nobody knows who or what she is. They just know that that Flowing Queen uses her magic like through the canals, and it keeps the Egyptians at bay. And Seraphine and Meryl hear a plan to like kidnap the Flowing Queen, and so then they get roped into trying to save her. And yeah, this is only like 250 pages, and I remember really liking the writing style even as a kid, but because it's short and I have that memory, I think this is going to be the first one that I try out. I also just love like the, what is this called? Jacket. The jacket is like this matte paper, and I always love those. They feel so nice. Yeah, I really like the cover a lot. I think the art is so nice. The brunette is Meryl, but, and then I also think those are cool. Like the mermaids look so cool. But yeah, so those are all the books that I'm gonna be reading and talking to you guys about. And I'm gonna start with The Water Mirror first. I will see you soon. Okay, so it's taken me forever to get around to filming today, but I got the first half of The Watermere read last night, and I am loving it so far. It has like that magical feeling that Gail Carson Levine's books have for me, and I don't know specifically what it is that gives me that feeling. I guess it's just some younger fantasy books just have like those stereotypical fantasy elements that just bring me a lot of joy. Like this one, it's things that really scream fantasy. It has the stone lions with wings, and there's the mermaids, and a couple other things that I don't know if I can really talk about without it being kind of spoilery, but I just love that kind of stuff. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of Gail Carson Levine's books, but it also has like this eerie mysteriousness a little bit that hers don't have, and I'm really enjoying that. And the writing is beautiful, like how I remembered, but not in like that overly flowery way that sometimes you see in like adult fantasy. And not that there's anything wrong with flowery writing, because sometimes I do like that as well. It's just this author has created a beautiful world and does a really good job at describing everything. Since it is a middle grade book, I'm pretty sure you're not going to be getting kind of as fleshed out of characters as you do in YA and adult fantasy, but it's not hindering the story at all for me. I'm still having an amazing time, and I'm really hoping that things stay at this level, because right now I love it and plan to continue on with this series. But yeah, so I'm having a great time, and I'll see you guys when I'm done. These videos never end up getting done in the time span that I think they're gonna be when I'm planning for them, but I finished The Watermere, and I really, really like this book. It got kind of chaotic, I guess, in the later half, but I still had like an amazing time, and I am definitely looking forward to picking up the second book. The only thing that sucks with this series is it's not a well-known one, so I can't like rent it from the library or anything like that and read them that way first to make sure I love the whole thing. Instead, I just have to buy them off Amazon, and then hopefully I'll love them. But it worked out this time around, so hopefully for the next book it will too. But yeah, so like if you love fast-paced adventure stories, even like the younger side, and enjoy books like maybe like Gail Carson Levine's, like the way they do like the pacing and the adventure and everything in those, I think you'll really like this. Yeah, so that is one down, and the next one, I think we're just gonna jump straight into the next fantasy, because that put me like in the mood for it. Initially I was thinking I was gonna read the Kitchen Princess manga next, but since I actually have a decent amount of energy right now, might as well go with a book because it takes like a little bit more brain power, I guess, to get through, and then I can go with Kitchen Princess on like a more tired time period, I guess. So the next one I'll be reading is The Shadow Thieves by Anne Ursu. But see you in like 200 pages. I read the first 160 pages of The Shadow Thieves, and I have very mixed things to say about this book, because I do think it's good, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who loves Greek mythology and enjoys like middle grade books, or maybe if you have like kids in your life, I would highly suggest it for them, because I can tell that it's good. It's just not one that I'm going to continue with, since this isn't like a book that someone is asking me to read. I just picked this up myself. Since I'm not enjoying myself, I'm just gonna stop, because I've realized that my tastes have changed slightly since I was younger. I am much more a fantasy world type of fantasy reader than I used to be, I think, because both this book and The Watermere, the main character's like 12, 13 years old, something like that. And they feel so different to me in the levels of how I'm being drawn into the world and liking them and everything. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that in The Watermere, we're following a 13-year-old girl who's an orphan and is starting off the book going to start a new apprenticeship with a man who makes magic mirrors and stuff. Like, that is exciting to me. Whereas like in this one, it's our world, and so the things that our characters are dealing with are very mundane until the fantasy stuff hits, and even then, like, you know, it's has like the mundane stuff thrown in, and so it's I'm finding it harder for me to enjoy that. And I've also noticed that in books like this, the writing style is made, I feel like, to be more relatable to the age. Like in The Water Mirror, even though the main character is 13, it's just kind of written like a story, whereas like in this one, because it's a 13-year-old in our world, I feel like she's written to be very relatable to the 13-year-olds reading the story. So here, I marked a couple sections of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And so for this one, I marked something that says, Z is the cousin's name, by the way. It says, next to her, Z was paying careful attention to Mr. Matos like a good boy. He had probably never doodled in class in his life. British boys probably didn't do that. They were too busy making friends and being polite and stealing people's kittens. And just jealousy at how well your cousin does at making friends at school when you kind of struggle with it. It's not really something I look for in my fantasy books, honestly. So it's just that kind of like relatability things that I think would make it really good for the age group. It's just my tastes have changed, and plus now I'm older, so the relatability doesn't work for me. So this isn't really one that I'm enjoying personally. And then also one other thing that I marked as being a little off-putting for me was in the point where we're like learning about the underworld. It's like, I don't know if it's meant to be comedic or what, but the underworld is written in a way to where it's over time it's developed into basically a corporation. So there's lots of like different managers and advisors and things like that now. And it says, and of course with children came institutional needs, and the underworld adapted. Daycare, a good school system, interspecies medicine. Children are another realm's most valuable resource, and Hades made sure they were treated accordingly, and he was rewarded. Most of the kids grew up to work in the administration, serving Hades loyally and eternally. So I could see how that could be funny or just like a fun time and stuff, but again, that's not what I'm looking for. So I think I'm gonna be DNFing this book, but I'm not gonna unhaul it. With younger books like this, as if I think that they are a good book, just not for me, then I keep them. So that way my kiddo can read them as he gets older if they interest him, you know? But next I'm gonna be reading the Kitchen Princess series by Natsumi Ando. And I'm a little nervous to read this because I have so much nostalgia towards it. And it's a series that I've actually owned since I got it in like, I'm pretty sure it was 6th grade. It might have been 7th, but I'm pretty sure it was like 6th grade. And it's just really special to me, so I'm a little nervous to see if it doesn't live up to the memory. But I'm gonna read the first 5 volumes and then check in with you guys. Okay, I am so glad because I've read the first 5 volumes so far and I still love it. Hopefully it stays the same after I finish the series, but I'm really happy. I love Najika, the main character. She reminds me a lot of Toru, or however you say her name, from Fruits Basket, except I actually think Najika stands up for herself a little bit more. So that's nice. And the series is just really sweet and a little emotional. The mangaka of the series, I have another one written by her. What is it called? Something's Wrong with Us, I think is what it is. And between those two, I have a really big hunch that the mangaka loves dramas, like watching them, because there are things in both series that I feel like are more common in like K-dramas and stuff than they are in manga. I don't want to go into what they are because I feel like that'd be a little bit spoilery, but just very dramatic, you know? So that might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I've enjoyed watching Asian dramas and telenovelas and stuff like that since I was like 14. So I really enjoy that kind of stuff. It really keeps things fast-paced and chaotic and just like, oh, what's gonna happen next, you know? Another thing that I've noticed as a trend with this mangaka is both of the series I have are about food. In this series, the main girl, her like special skill that she has, because everyone in her class has like a thing that they're special at, hers is cooking, and she also has like an insane sense of taste. Like she can taste something once and then be able to recreate it exactly. The mangaka has this talent to at least make me really want to make food. Like I said earlier, this series, I found it when I was really thinking I wanted to be like a pastry chef. There was another anime that I watched called Yumiro Patissiere or something like that, patisserie. But it was like a pastry chef school kids anime, and so knowing that I love that and this, I wasn't sure if it was just the phase I was in or if I was still gonna enjoy this series, but it's still really cute and it makes me want to get back into baking. It's really just the main character wanting to connect with people, and the way that she does that is through her food. Like that's her easiest way of like showing that she's thinking of them and stuff. And it's just the relationships she builds and her love of her family, like at the orphanage. And there's like a slow build of some other drama stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna finish the series and then I'll check back in, but I'm pretty sure I already know I love this series. All right, Kitchen Princess is complete, and it is still dramatic and heartwarming and fun. I loved it so much. And now I just really want to try all the recipes in the back of the books. But yeah, my views on the series are still like the same as they were at the halfway point. Basically, if you like dramas, like Asian dramas, telenovelas, soap operas, that kind of stuff, like the drama in that, or like, you know how in shows like Vampire Diaries or Pretty Little Liars and stuff like that, it's just something new is constantly happening to add to the chaos. If you like that kind of stuff and then you like shoujo, romance, manga type of thing, like this is perfect. This is gonna be painful, but I think that the next book I'm gonna read is A Child Called It. I'm looking forward to it and not looking forward to it at the same time. This is like the first nonfiction book I ever read, and I think it's like the only one that's ever hit me emotionally. So I don't know if I'm prepared for this, but it's only 160 pages long. So I'll see you in 80 pages. So I actually read all of A Child Called It last night. It's only 160 pages. So when I got to the halfway point, I was like, well, that was like barely anything, you know, and just decided to read the whole thing. It's so good. There's not really something you can say about the story because it is a memoir. Like, I feel like it's kind of a different type of review, I guess, of it than I would give for a piece of fiction. But I would say that the way that the author wrote this is really captivating, because this first book is from the point of his life from like 4 or 5 years old until he's like 12, and he writes in a way that feels like you're following this child rather than just an adult telling you about his childhood. Like you feel like you're with him as a child, you know? So the way that he did that was really nice. The stuff he has gone through is insane. I highly recommend this book for everybody. I read this in 6th grade, and I remember my mom, like, I would read out parts to her, and she like got to the point where she's like, you can't read more of that to me. I can't handle it, you know? Like, it is intense. I had forgotten that in this first book, we haven't even gotten to him being in foster care yet. So that, I forgot that I had read at least part of, if not all of the second book, and that's where that takes place. But yeah, it's so good. This is one of the few books that I would recommend like to literally everybody rather than trying to judge based on taste, just because I feel like it's so important, you know? But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that one. I do plan to pick up the next book at some point. Yeah. So I only have 3 books left, and the Burn Journals is my final physical one. The other 2 are on Libby. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with this one, but I do have my work week starting tonight. So I'll be starting the audiobook for, which one is audio version? Life as We Knew It. I'll be starting tonight as well, so I'm not sure what order things are gonna come up, but I will see you soon. So last night during work, I ended up being able to actually listen to all of the audiobook for Life as We Knew It by Susan Beth Pfeffer. Pfeffer, I think is how you say that. And it surpassed my expectations so much. I didn't really have a lot of memories of the book. I just knew it was one that like stuck out to me as a kid when I read it. And I ended up really enjoying it. It's written as like journal entries by our main character, Miranda. And it's basically a story of hope, and it shows the struggle to survive that her and her family go through after an asteroid knocks the moon closer to Earth and basically causes Earth to go into chaos. Like there's earthquakes and tsunamis and all this crazy stuff happening, and food shortages and a lack of electricity and all this stuff. And I actually feel like it did a good job at kind of portraying it through the perspective of a kid, of like a 15-year-old, without it feeling like frustrating as an adult reader. You know, sometimes when you're seeing like a kid go through things, like some of the things that they'll do will just drive me crazy, and I didn't really go through that in this book at all. Like there might have been like one or two scenes where I was like, come on, you know, but it wasn't enough to be annoying. And I found it really interesting to read this after everything that we've dealt with in the last few years, and just kind of compare similarities and differences. But yeah, so just with like my general taste in books, I did not expect this to be something that I would connect with really well. But I think because the author kind of really jumps into things, like you don't spend a lot of time in the world before things kick off. So there wasn't really any drag time for me, like things got interesting quick. I think that that is what was able to keep me hooked, I guess, even though it's, you know, just our world supposed to be like kind of a realistic thing. And it's actually a series, I found out. I didn't remember that, but I had only ever read the first one, and I saw on Libby that it's a series. I think there's like 4 or so books, and I cheated and read what the next 2 are about, which I feel like that's not something that people generally do, but it looks really interesting, so I think I might actually continue with this series. But yeah, so this one's definitely a keep book. The next one that I'll be talking to you guys will most likely be the Burn Journals. So I messed up. I should not have read all the like fantasy and dystopian, like the non-realistic things. I should not have saved those or like read all of those so quickly. I should have at least saved one for the end. Having Criss Cross and the Burn Journals as my last 2 books really set me up for failure. It's been over 11 days since my last upload on this channel, and before this, the longest I had gone, I'm pretty sure, was 7 days. And it's been really eating me up. I hate that I've gone so long, and it's been for 2 reasons. The first is that there is a Sephora sale going on, which I don't shop there a lot, but there's a lot of YouTubers that I watch that do like videos on that stuff. And so when I saw that, my mind gets very one track oriented sometimes. And it started going like, so I don't own any eyeshadow at all. And it started going like, you know, you really just need like a perfect single palette that would just have what you need for everyday use, and that would be like the only one you have. And so then I watched hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos about makeup palettes. And then today I went to Sephora to go look in person at them and was like, why am I looking at these? I won't use this, maybe like once or twice, but like I'm not an eyeshadow person. So I don't know why I did that to myself. Thankfully that has ended. But the other thing, and I think that this part, my second reason is why the first one happened, is that I was really struggling with these last 2 books. So I DNF'd Criss Cross by Lynn Ray Perkins because it is so not what I read anymore. I don't know why I even bothered picking that one up. I guess like it fit the video, and it was one that I remembered really sticking in my head. But I was so like right about what it is. It's just like a slice of life kind of hipster vibe story. I ended up DNFing it like before the halfway point, and it's not bad at all. I think that it's probably a really good book for the age group. It just was so boring to me. I couldn't get into it. But I did like that the characters in it were like less edgy, I guess, than a lot of teenage characters in books are. So it was kind of refreshing. It was like they were just pleasant to be around. But yeah, it was just kind of like kids discovering themselves, getting into new hobbies for themselves, like learning the guitar or going to slam poetry stuff or listening to radio shows. Like, there just wasn't much of anything really going on, and I don't know if that changes later on. I honestly can't remember, and I didn't really care to find out. But yeah, so I DNF'd that one. And then the burn journals, I technically DNF'd, but I'm not going to be unhauling it. Since I do have a physical copy of that one, I had to decide, and I'm not going to unhaul that one because I do think that I have a chance of picking it back up and enjoying it, and I do really want to experience the author's story again because it has been like half my life since I read it the last time. I think it's just that because it is about his recovery and stuff, the parts that I was able to read before I stopped, it was all taking place in the hospital, and so it was very slow paced, and I was just not able to stay focused. And I feel like that with Criss Cross was putting me into a little bit of a rut, and I didn't know if I would read it and then finish this video, or if I would just end up putting it off, and then next thing I know, I'm like never using this channel again. So I'm gonna save it, and I do plan, I think, to pick it up again, but it's like a soft DNF for now. It makes me really sad, and I feel bad doing that with a memoir, and I think that that's another reason why I'm not just getting rid of it. Yeah, so that's where I stand right now with these last two books. I really enjoyed this whole video concept that I've done, and one thing that I'm thankful for is if I do this again for a different age, then I think that I have a higher chance of at least getting through everything, because I don't really remember having other contemporary and nonfiction and stuff that I liked at an older age. So I am still interested in doing this again. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know what you guys' favorite middle school books were. Have a great day. Bye.